Hey everyone, so I'm just here today to give you guys a quick review or a look into the Tilta Gravity performance. A lot of people have been asking me. We recently came out with our first product, which is the Cinemilled Tilta Gravity Universal mount. And that's actually how I have it mounted on my tripod. Now, the reason why it's mounted on my tripod is actually pretty simple. One of the main difficulties with heavy payloads on gimbals is the overstressing of the pan motor. And so if you take any extended length gimbal that has a heavy payload on it, such as an M15 or a Ronin with our Cinemilled extensions, and then you put even a long tilt extension, a long pan arm extension, which we all make for the Ronin, what suffers the most is the pan motor. And that's because that's the one that's going to do the most work, because it has to overcome the inertia of when you pan. So one of the first things I wanted to test out was how strong that pan motor is. So right here, I didn't have a proper camera to do this test. This is actually like a 1960s Arri 16mm BL camera. What it is good for is it's very long. It's very long, and it's very heavy. I got to look up. I'll weigh this after I'm done, and I'll put the weight right here somewhere. But I don't know. It's probably close to 15 or 20 pounds. Of course, it's missing the magazine, and I had to take the cover off the electric motor there. But in any case, it's here just as weight to replicate. Possibly this could replicate like an f/55 with a big PL lens on it, or a Red Epic or Weapon with a battery on the back and a zoom lens, and so on and so forth. So let's see here. So first off, let me grab the iPhone app. So here, let's see here. Let me log in. And okay, so here's the iPhone app, and one of the first thing I did was I went in here, and there's a preset for, sorry, the camera's not focusing, but 5 kilograms, which is somewhere around 10 pounds. So based on that preset, without modifying any of the settings, I'm going to do some initial tests, which you guys can see, and it actually works pretty decent right off that preset. One of the difficulties I had was essentially, let me see if the camera can focus. There we go. One of the difficulties I had was understanding what the hell they meant with dynamics, speed, and compensate. So as far as I could tell, dynamics has something to do with the equivalent of stiffness on a DJI Ronin. So if that on a heavy camera like this, if you have it too high, usually, like, I know from my experience on the Ronin, if you have it too high, that's not a good thing. It tends to tail wag when it ends the panning motion. So there's always a sweet spot. So that's what I think dynamics is. It's really tough trying to translate these random sort of nomenclature that they assign to things into what it actually does. Speed, well, that's kind of straightforward, I think. I don't know why they're all at 0, but... And then compensate, looking at their tutorial video, they say something about shock compensation. So, and then they just sort of like push down on the camera, which really doesn't tell you much. It doesn't really explain what the hell they meant with that. So anyways, let's go back here, and let's go into, that's calibration. That's if you're doing a remote control. And then right up here is, of course, the different modes. So like trace mode, focus, trace mode, portable mode, which what that actually means is like briefcase mode, and then there's trace mode. So which is what it's in right now. Motion sensing is the remote control. So right in here, this is where we want to go. So you see there it's preset to 5 kilograms, and you can save settings, which is really nice, and then you can name them, which is also good. So you can name it like red camera cook lens or whatever, red cook, or so on and so forth, which is kind of cool, because then once you figure something out, at least it'll get you in the ballpark in the future. So then we got Servo Acceleration, which, well, it's pretty straightforward. I know this well from the Ronin, and I'll get into it, and Dead Zone. So this is where it is when you click on 5 kilograms. This is where it lands. So let's say, for example, yaw, which is the panning motion. Right now it's at 72. So let me put the phone down right down there. And so when I pan, servo acceleration, the way I was taught about this, is the difference. This is great. It's great that it's on a tripod, because you can really accurately make sense of things, because here we have the input stick. So, and you can see essentially that there's a difference between the angle that's on the input and then its reaction. So if you go really fast, the difference between the two is what acceleration essentially compensates for. It's how fast it accelerates to where you have, in this case, the pan bar. So that is a very important adjustment that I play with a lot on the Ronin, and I'm sure it's going to come into play here. And then the other, and so, and let me get it to focus. So the important thing is, you see, is that what I really like about the Tilta so far is that when you make a change, and you don't even have to change it that much, confirm. Oh, I guess I didn't hit confirm. When you make a change, there's an actual big reaction from the gimbal. And with the Ronin, we might be a little bit used to making a change in the app and not seeing that much difference. And so you can see already, if you compared, if you pay attention or you rewind, you can see that it's catching up to my position a lot slower. So let's do that again. So we're here. 1, 2, 3. See that? So let's go back. Turn. 1, 2, 3. So it's, once again, so that really shows you what acceleration does. It shows you how fast the motors catch up to your input. So actually a lot of people misuse this, and it's a very important adjustment. And so you saw here we're only at 43, and let's have that. Let's go to 20. And oh, I gotta do right. Okay. And so now you're gonna see 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see it increased by 1 second. So we want it to be very responsive. So I'm going to return it back to the 72 number, which is where it was on the preset, because I want to show you the way it reacts naturally. So once again, so see, now that it's at 72, it's barely even a second behind. I mean, it's pretty much reacting right away, which is really great, especially for a heavy payload. So the other thing I want to talk about, which a lot of people are familiar with, they call it dead zone. The Ronin calls it deadband, and right now it's at 0. So this is something that I've been previously fairly frustrated with the Ronin, is that you have the Ronin set at 0 and it's not really 0. So let me explain deadband real quick. So deadband is literally, let me do a top view here where you can still see it. So you see there's this axis, right? So it's literally, here's my input device, right? So it's literally the difference in angle, right? So if you have a 5 deadband, that's 5 degrees of movement with no reaction from the gimbal. So at 0, right, there's every input into your panning motion. So if you're holding the handlebars, this would be turning the handlebars, should result in a movement from the pan motor, right? So it should be 1-to-1, almost like a tripod head is. And with the Ronin, it doesn't really do this. And with the Tilta right now at 0, it's pretty awesome. It's doing exactly what it should do. Let me go up a little higher here so you can see. Every little movement I make, regardless of how small it is, results in a panning motion. And even if I go fast, it's reaction. And if I go slow, see that? That's a little bit of movement, and it's going left and right. So this shows exactly why you don't want a 0 deadband if you're running. Because if you're running, you're holding the handlebars, and the tendency of our bodies is for our arms to move when we run. And so if you have a 0 deadband and you're running, you might be doing a little bit of this subconsciously, and the result will be that you're going to be running and the camera will be panning left to right. And so if you're doing running shots, you don't want a 0 deadband. So let's change that. Okay, so let's go in here and dead zone yaw, so because we're talking about panning. And so if I increase that to, let's say 20, okay? So confirm, and it's setting successful. What I should see now is I should be able to turn it 20 degrees with no reaction from the gimbal. You see what's happening there? Look at that. I'm turning the tripod head. So it's really great that we have our Cinemilled mounting plate, because when it's on the tripod, you can very accurately test these things, because you can see the difference in angle between your input device and this. Right now we have a 90-degree setting, right? We have the pan handle and we have the axis here. So you can see I actually, if this is replicating you sort of running down the street, you're going to be wagging the handlebars and there's going to be no reaction from the gimbal, which is exactly what we want. And sometimes in the past with the Ronin, even with a 0 deadband, you still got a little reaction. Or with, usually the problem is even with a 0 deadband, the problem was with the 0 deadband, it felt like you weren't getting a 1-to-1 reaction. So sorry if that was a little confusing. I'm not redoing these takes, but so just to get this straight again. So the problem with the Ronin was that you would set a 0 deadband and you still were able to move it a lot with no reaction from the gimbal, which made it feel like it wasn't following you very well. So with this one, the deadband setting is, I would say, fairly accurate. I mean, we put it to 0 and we got almost a 1-to-1 reaction. It was there was a delay, but that's expected. And so the great thing about this is now we have a 20 setting on the deadband. And here, let me go nice top-down view. And you're going to see I'm moving the tripod head using our Cinemilled Universal adapter, and there is no reaction from the gimbal. Now, if I go past 20 degrees, look at that, just like clockwork. So that's 0 again. So if I go 20 degrees, then it starts to turn. So this is great. It's very useful in the pitch also. I mean, it's one of those settings that sometimes people don't play with, but it's what separates really great results from poor results. And so let's go back to the dead zone, and because for my testing I want to go back to 0, because that means the motors are working their hardest, right? So I'm going to put the app away right now. And so this is basically out of the box 5 kilogram preset on the app. And so once again, we got a heavy camera. I'm going to put the weight up here. Once I finish this, I'm going to put it on my scale and weigh it for you, so you have a reference. But also very important is that we have a long camera that's heavy, right? So this replicates a lot of the builds that we'll be doing on this heavy duty gimbal. So here's what I really want to show, and this is the litmus test, right? Is I'm going to do a very quick 90-degree pan, and I want to see how good it arrests the motion at the end of the pan. And so the problem is with extended length is that you get more leverage, right? This is a pivot point. We're putting the weight further away, so you get more leverage on the pan motor. And so in previous times, the gimbals have a hard time dealing with that. So once we start extending these and adding more weight and stuff, the motors have more work to do. And so what happens is if you pan too fast with the gimbal, once it reaches the end, it's gonna blow past the end and come back. So it's what I call a wag. So it'll do this, right? So you don't want that. So if this camera I was holding right now was on a Ronin, a very extended Ronin with a heavy thing, what would happen is when I would pan, it would do this, right? Which is what we don't want. We want perfectly stop right where we want it to go. That's the sort of the holy grail. That's what Steadicam operators can do. And previously this meant that gimbals can't pan. And so here, let's go. Let's give it a try. Look at that. That is pretty good. So you see there a little bit of over panning. So let's try that again. And now, mind you, I'm moving this very fast. So I'm going to do a 90-degree pan and see how it stops. That is really good. So let's do that again. Let me get it here set to 90 degrees. Oh, I went a little past it. So let's do that again. And bam. Bam. So you see there's a little bit of delay, but I really have to point out again that if you try the same thing on a Ronin, maybe that's something I should try, so we can show the difference and compare and contrast. This Tilta definitely has a stronger motors, and the programming is fairly decent. I mean, it is not wagging much at the end, and remember, I'm stopping fairly abruptly. Let's try that again. So I'm being very rough with it. And you see very little wag. I mean, maybe a tiny bit. And in the past, I mean, with a heavy build like this, you would get a lot more over panning and correction. And so for an out-of-the-box on the app 5 kilogram setting, it's doing this very well. So let me just now grab the app and let's make a change. And you're gonna see that what things can do here. So if we go motor, we want to do yaw. Let's try. It's 50 right now. Let's go down on the dynamics, which is the stiffness setting that I talked about. So if we go down to 27. Oh, it didn't take. All right. Confirm. Ah, my thumb is hitting the wrong thing. All right. There we go. All right. So we went slower. So in Ronin terms, less stiffness. So let's see here. Aha. See, now you're seeing the over panning. So let's come back. You see that? See that correction? So it goes, I stop the input and it goes past where I stopped and then it goes back. So this is a good demonstration of why you really need to adjust that stiffness setting, because that can make the gimbal seem very inaccurate. So let's go back here. So yeah. So there's a sweet spot, and I want to demonstrate that, because for every given payload, if you go too high, right, let's go to like 90. All right, so now we just went in the other direction. So we're at 90. Let's see what it does. First of all, maybe you won't notice on the camera, but it's vibrating. So it's already too high, but let's see. Wow, so it's responding pretty good. So it likes more stiffness. Now it's vibrating pretty good. I don't know if you could tell, but it's doing one of these things, which maybe you can see that or not, but the matte box is shaking. But in any case, so even though it's performing fairly decent, the stiffness is just too high. I mean, it's vibrating, it's complaining. So really we want to go down maybe to like 75. And let's see here. Let's see how it does. Much better. Very nice. Okay, well, so that's kind of like my little quick review of the app. And basically, you know, it's a good start. Tilta just came out. This is their first gimbal. A lot of innovative ideas. The motor performance seems pretty good. And they just need to, you know, correct some of the language in the app and maybe write a set of instructions or do a tutorial video where they give their explanation as to what these parameters have, what kind of effect they have on what you're trying to do. And most importantly, and this is where some gimbal techs are better than others, they understand why in a particular shot you might need to have one setting versus the other. But most importantly, our Cinemilled Universal mount for the Tilta Gravity. There you go. It is also compatible with the toad in the hole. You get all sorts of mounting holes. This is what made this test possible. It is obviously, it's shipping. It's in stock and shipping at the moment. And we already have quite a few happy customers. And so you'll be able to do things like this. Now, one of the other tests I'm going to do in just a moment is the remote control test, their sort of mimic tester, which this is also a great platform in order to take a look at that test. So basically, you know, as far as problems, really the only problem I keep having is this battery. It doesn't really click in very good, especially when you're overslung like this. Once I turn it off, I'll turn it back on and it won't light up, and I have to take the battery out and click it back in. That's really sort of one of the main problems I'm having right now, and that it doesn't like to be turned on upside down. You can turn it on and then flip it, which is what I did here, and then I slid it in. But I'm sure that'll get fixed in a shortly, and probably in the next update, because that's kind of a basic function. But right now it's misbehaving. There's certainly a few things that the app doesn't have that it should have. It's very confusing on how to reset the center, because, you know, once you get it on a tripod like this, you see it's facing not in the direction I want it to be. So on the Ronin, we have a function called Calibrate Center, which is really simple. You just hit Calibrate Center, you turn it to where you want it to be, and you hit it OK. On this one, it took me a while to figure this out. And basically, you have to turn the motor off, hit location cal, turn the gimbal in the direction you want it to be, and then hit OK, and then turn the motor back on. So it's very confusing. It would be much better if they just did a motor calibration button. The other thing I didn't see is a way to reverse, because obviously when you flip things around, everything, all the controls get reversed. It's something that's in the DJI app, so they got some work to do. But gimbal itself, it's a good start. A lot of features that we need, and I hope you guys found this useful. And once again, we have more than a few products coming out, so stay tuned. And we're probably going to do a few more videos, because I know a lot of you are on the fence and are curious about the work we're doing. We're also going to be testing this pretty heavily in the next few weeks, so look out for a few more videos we'll be doing. Alright, thanks a lot, and check us out online, cinemilled.com. If you have any questions, you can email me at sales@cinemilled.com, and thank you very much. Alright guys, so I just want to add a little postscript here. Of course, I needed to show you something while I did this voiceover, so I figured I'd show you the new Cinemilled Tilta Gravity Universal mount with all its wonderful attachment points. And so mainly the postscript was just that, you know, while the gimbal did very good in this initial test, you know, the camera, as I pointed out earlier, is only 13.2 pounds, and so, you know, they say this gimbal is rated up to 33. So I'm very curious to do the same test but with a very large camera with a lot of weight. What I expect to happen is a little bit of that tail wagging that that we see so commonly on other gimbals when they're overweighted. So anyways, quick little postscript, and see you guys soon. I'll be doing some more testing. Alright, check out our website, cinemilled.com.